The woods had always held a certain allure for me. The dense canopy of trees, the rustling leaves, and the gentle trickle of a nearby stream created a symphony of nature that called out to my soul. For years, I had ventured into those woods, finding solace and peace in the quietude of the wilderness. But one fateful autumn, the tranquility I had come to cherish would be shattered by a chilling encounter that would haunt me forever. It began as an ordinary weekend retreat. The leaves had turned a brilliant array of reds and oranges, and the crisp air held the promise of adventure. Armed with my backpack and a sense of wanderlust, I set off on a solo hiking trip into the heart of the forest. My journey took me deeper into the woods than I had ever been before. The dense underbrush seemed to close in around me, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. The forest felt alive, each rustling leaf and distant bird call a part of its ancient song. As I hiked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of being watched. It was a subtle unease that prickled at the back of my neck. I chalked it up to my imagination, but the feeling persisted, growing more pronounced with every step. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows that stretched like skeletal fingers through the trees. A sense of foreboding settled over me, and I decided to make camp for the night. I chose a small clearing near the stream where the water's gentle babbling would serve as a soothing lullaby. Night fell, and I huddled by my campfire, its warm glow pushing back the encroaching darkness. I tried to shake off my unease as I prepared a simple meal, but the feeling of being watched lingered. That night, I settled into my sleeping bag, the forest's nocturnal chorus serving as my lullaby. But just as I was about to drift into slumber, a sound reached my ears, a faint, distant whisper that sent a chill down my spine. It was a voice, soft and haunting, barely audible above the symphony of the night. I strained to listen, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice seemed to come from all around me, as if the very forest itself was speaking. The words were incomprehensible, a guttural, otherworldly language that sent shivers of dread through my body. In a state of fear and curiosity, I unzipped my tent and peered into the inky darkness. The forest was alive with eerie, flickering shadows, and I could swear I saw movement among the trees. Suddenly, the voice grew louder, more distinct, and I recognized it as a name that sent terror coursing through my veins. Wendigo, it whispered, each syllable dripping with malevolence. I knew the legends of the Wendigo, the cursed creature of the woods said to possess those who ventured too far into its domain. It was said to be a cannibalistic spirit, driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. My mind raced with fear and disbelief. Could it be true? Was I really being stalked by the Wendigo? I desperately scanned the woods for any sign of the creature, but saw nothing. The voice continued to taunt me, growing louder and more deranged. In a frenzy, I packed up my camp and fled into the night, guided only by the pale light of the moon. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees twisting and contorting like monstrous specters. The voice of the Wendigo pursued me, its taunts growing more frenzied, more maddening. Hours passed, but I couldn't escape the relentless pursuit of the creature. My legs ached, my breath came in ragged gasps, and I knew I couldn't keep running forever. The Wendigo's whispers had driven me to the brink of insanity, and I feared that I was losing my grip on reality. Just when I thought I couldn't go on, I stumbled upon a small, ancient-looking shrine hidden deep within the forest. It was adorned with offerings, shiny trinkets, colorful beads, and bits of food. Desperation led me to place a small offering of my own and utter a prayer for protection. To my astonishment, the voice of the Wendigo ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. The forest around me seemed to exhale, as if a great weight had been lifted. With trembling hands, I continued my trek, now unburdened by the relentless whispers. Dawn broke, and I emerged from the woods, my body battered and my mind scarred by the horrors of the night. I stumbled upon a small village where the locals regarded me with a mixture of pity and awe. They had heard tales of the Wendigo and marveled at my survival. To this day, I carry the memories of that fateful night with me. I cannot explain the encounter with the Wendigo, nor can I forget its chilling whispers, but I know that I am one of the fortunate few to have escaped the clutches of that malevolent spirit. As I share my story, I am left with an unsettling question. Was the Wendigo a creature of flesh and bone, or was it something far more sinister? a manifestation of the darkness that dwells within the depths of the human soul. The mysteries of that night remain unsolved, a haunting enigma that will continue to haunt me for the rest of my days.
The forest loomed around us, an endless expanse of twisted trees and impenetrable underbrush. What had begun as a weekend hiking trip with my closest friends had turned into a nightmarish ordeal. Lost in the wilderness, our supplies dwindling and desperation gnawing at our sanity, we faced a grim choice that no one should ever have to make. It was autumn, and the vibrant foliage that had initially captivated us had become an oppressive, suffocating curtain. Our group consisted of 5 friends: Lena, Mark, Sarah, Chris, and myself, David. We had always been adventurers, seeking the thrill of the unknown, but now, the unknown had us in its iron grip. We had ventured deep into the forest, following a trail that had promised the beauty of untouched nature and hidden waterfalls. The hike had started as a joyous escapade, filled with laughter and the anticipation of discovery. But as the hours wore on, the trail faded into obscurity, and we realized we were well and truly lost. The sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness descended upon us like a shroud. Panic set in as we tried to retrace our steps, but the forest seemed to twist and shift, disorienting us further. Our only source of light was a feeble flashlight that flickered ominously. Hunger gnawed at our stomachs, and the forest offered no sustenance. Our supplies had dwindled to a few granola bars and a single bottle of water. We huddled together for warmth, the chill of the night seeping through our clothing. Our situation grew more dire with each passing hour. We had no cell signal, and the forest was an impenetrable maze of trees and darkness. Exhaustion and fear hung over us like a suffocating fog. It was Lena who first broached the unthinkable, a suggestion that none of us wanted to entertain. She spoke of the legend of the Wendigo, a creature said to inhabit these woods. According to the stories, the Wendigo was a malevolent spirit that possessed those who resorted to cannibalism in times of desperation. I scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as mere superstition. But as hunger gnawed at our insides and desperation settled in, Lena's words took on a sinister allure. We began to discuss the possibility of hunting for food, foraging for berries, anything to stave off the relentless hunger. The forest seemed to mock our feeble attempts at survival. We searched for edible plants but found none. Our attempts to catch small game with makeshift traps proved futile. The night air was filled with the agonizing cries of our empty stomachs. Days turned into a week, and our condition deteriorated rapidly. Weakness and delirium set in, and we could barely muster the strength to move. We knew that we were teetering on the edge of desperation, and the legend of the Wendigo continued to whisper in our ears. One night, as we lay huddled together for warmth, the unthinkable happened. Chris, driven to madness by hunger, turned to Sarah with a look of desperation and longing. He muttered something unintelligible, and before any of us could react, he lunged at her with a wild, crazed look in his eyes. The struggle was brief, but violent. We managed to pull Chris away from Sarah, but the damage had been done. Sarah's screams filled the forest, a chilling chorus of despair. The others pinned Chris down as I tended to Sarah's wounds, tears streaming down my face. In the aftermath of that horrific encounter, our group was fractured. Chris, consumed by guilt and madness, had fled into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. Lena, Mark, and I were left to grapple with the nightmare that had become our reality. As the days passed, Sarah's condition worsened. Infection set in and her fever raged uncontrollably. We knew that without proper medical attention, she would not survive. We were faced with an agonizing choice: leave Sarah behind and search for help, or stay by her side and watch her slowly waste away. We chose to stay, unable to abandon our friend in her time of need. Lena and Mark took turns caring for Sarah, doing their best to keep her comfortable despite the lack of medical supplies. But the forest offered no respite, no salvation. As Sarah's strength waned, she began to whisper deliriously, her words a disjointed symphony of despair and hallucination. But one phrase stood out, a phrase that sent a shiver down my spine, the name of the Wendigo. In her fevered state, Sarah spoke of a dark presence in the forest, a hunger that could not be sated. She muttered about the Wendigo, its insatiable appetite, and the curse that had befallen us. Her words were a haunting reminder of the choice we had made, the choice that had led us down this nightmarish path. And then, one fateful night, Sarah's fever finally broke. Her breathing grew shallow, and her eyes stared blankly at the canopy above. Lena and Mark held her hand, their faces etched with grief and guilt. As Sarah took her final breath, a chilling silence fell over the forest. The wind seemed to whisper through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of our terrible decision. We were left in the darkness, haunted by the specter of the Wendigo, and the knowledge that we had become the very thing we had feared. Lena and Mark and I were alone in the wilderness, our bodies weak and our souls burdened by the weight of our choices. The legend of the Wendigo had become our reality, a living nightmare from which there was no escape. In the end, we were the true monsters of the forest, consumed by the whispering hunger that had driven us to commit unspeakable acts. The forest had claimed us, body and soul, and as we faced the unforgiving wilderness, we knew that our ordeal was far from over.
The woods had always been our sanctuary, a place of solace and adventure. With my close friend Alex by my side and my trusty hunting rifle in hand, we ventured into the wilderness whenever we could. But on that fateful day, our peaceful excursion would transform into a nightmarish battle for survival against a malevolent force. Alex and I were experienced hunters, well acquainted with the thrill of the chase. Autumn had painted the forest with a vibrant tapestry of red and gold, and the crunch of leaves beneath our boots echoed through the woods. As we followed the trail of a massive buck, our excitement surged. However, as we delved deeper into the forest, a creeping unease settled over us. The trees grew taller, casting long, menacing shadows, and an oppressive silence weighed on our souls. It was as though the woods themselves were watching and waiting. Our pursuit led us to a clearing illuminated by an eerie, silvery light. At its center stood a gnarled, ancient tree with twisted branches that reached out like skeletal fingers. The remains of a small deer lay at its base, its carcass picked clean. A sense of dread washed over us as we exchanged wary glances. We couldn't ignore the stories, the legends of the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit rumored to inhabit these woods. The Wendigo was said to be a curse, a manifestation of greed and cannibalism, possessing those who surrendered to their darkest desires. Though we had always dismissed such tales as mere superstition, doubt began to creep into our minds. The eerie scene before us felt like a chilling omen. The forest had grown colder and darker, and we felt watched by unseen eyes. Pressing on, we tracked the buck deeper into the woods, but the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. We couldn't shake the feeling of being followed, and every rustle of leaves seemed to carry a sinister undertone. The trail twisted and turned, leading us further into the heart of darkness. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows. The forest came alive with nocturnal sounds, but an undercurrent of malevolence tainted the night. Our unease deepened. Finally, we caught sight of the massive buck, its antlers gleaming in the moonlight. It was a magnificent creature, but our sense of dread had intensified. As we prepared to take our shot, an unearthly growl shattered the silence, freezing us in our tracks. Emerging from the forest depths was a creature unlike anything we had ever encountered. It stood tall and emaciated, its limbs elongated and twisted. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, and its mouth opened in a chilling, soundless scream. The Wendigo had found us. Panicked, Alex and I raised our rifles, but our trembling hands betrayed our fear. The Wendigo lunged at us with inhuman speed, its sinewy arms reaching out to seize us. We fired our shots, but they had no effect. The Wendigo's grip was icy and relentless. Summoning every ounce of strength, I struggled to break free from the Wendigo's grasp, while Alex fought for his life beside me. The creature's strength was unnatural, and its presence was suffocating. In a desperate struggle, I managed to break free from the Wendigo's clutches and scrambled to my feet. My heart raced as I saw Alex locked in a deadly struggle with the creature, his terrified screams echoing through the night. With a heavy heart, I raised my rifle and took aim at the Wendigo. Tears blurred my vision, but I knew there was no other choice. I pulled the trigger and the shot rang out, filling the forest with a deafening blast. The Wendigo's grip on Alex weakened, and he fell to the ground, battered and bloodied. The creature emitted a haunting wail, its form shifting and dissipating like smoke in the wind. It was gone, leaving behind only the eerie silence of the forest. I rushed to Alex's side, fearing the worst. But miraculously, he was still breathing, though injured and unconscious. As I tended to his wounds, a sense of dread washed over me. Our encounter with the Wendigo had left us shaken and terrified. We managed to make our way out of the forest, our limbs heavy with exhaustion, and our hearts heavy with the knowledge of what we had witnessed. We were alive, but we couldn't shake the feeling that the Wendigo's curse had left its mark on us. In the days that followed, we both experienced unsettling nightmares. Visions of the Wendigo haunted our sleep, and a growing hunger gnawed at our souls. We were consumed by guilt and fear, wondering if the malevolent spirit had left us with a curse of its own. As we survived our encounter with the Wendigo, we couldn't escape the creeping dread that we had inherited something far more sinister. The insatiable hunger, the darkness that lurked within, the curse that would forever haunt our lives. We were left to wonder if our escape had come at a price we were destined to pay.